Yeah. You just can't find no more. I got a black elf on the shelf, and I was about to buy it. I was like, you don't even have kids. I was. And it was at Opryland, all the places. At the hotel.
Because the black treetop angels, black ornaments, little black angels.
We got all our
I know it. That's
I think it was some kind of thing that happened in society when they started saying, well, now, why don't you have black angels? Yeah, so then that year, all these black angels started appearing. So I started collecting.
Yeah. I need to go ahead and
I said, I can get to it now. I have an angel in my house.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
I want something with Jerry Curl and Afro.
And y'all inspired me. I was like, well, I'm going to have an angel. We usually do a star. But I was like, why can't I do a black angel? She got the red and the green. She's Pan-African. Exactly. I was mad at her. She's an RBI angel. I was mad because I was like, her tree is rose gold. She's not matching, but okay. She's got to be up there anyway.
Mommy, 7 people are already watching.
Okay, you got it started?
Yep.
All right. Well, let us choke out the other ritual if everybody can cross their hands. Who's still in the kitchen? Nubia and who else? Come on, my coach Lad, Maru. Come here so we can all talk. Put your hands together and say talk. So that just lets us know that that particular ritual is done. And so we are going to get into our winter solstice part of this particular ritual. And the sun is about to go down, so this is perfect time. We're moving into our beautiful, wonderful, powerful full moon. And what is it in, Sister Theta? It's in Cancer. 0 degrees. So I'm going to talk about
She
is the one.
Mom, can I chat? Like say greetings or something?
No. You want to?
I just want to say hello or
Okay,
something.
if you want to, go ahead. So we're going to talk about the winter solstice, and I want everybody to get an understanding of why everybody celebrates at this time. So y'all all know me, so y'all know I hate to do, or I refuse to do any kind of ritual where I don't teach people what's going on. That's not necessarily how we do it from an African perspective. The African perspective, you learn as you go. But we were all raised here, so we're used to having information. So my Oluwo from Nigeria was not, and is not a person who gives information like that. But my Ojubona, my trainer, my teacher, of course, was from here, literally here in Tennessee. And so he said he always taught us the importance of making sure that people know what they're doing. It's important for us born on this side to know exactly what it is that we're doing. So I wanted to talk a little bit about winter solstice so that we could get an understanding as to why every culture celebrates at this time of year. So every culture has a festival of lights at this time of year, right? So little people, younger people, because some of us are little and not young. What are some of the different festivals of light that people have at this time? What are some of the different things people celebrate at this time?
This time. Christmas,
Christmas
New Year's,
is one.
Chinese.
Hanukkah is another one. What's another one? Kwanzaa. And then when I went to Kelway's program, I learned about another one that I had never heard of. Yeah, Ramadan fell in December this year, so that was practiced in December, and also that Las Pasados, which I wasn't familiar with, that's celebrated at this time. But the reason that people on this side of the globe celebrate something at this time is because it is winter solstice, right? It's because it is the time of darkness, as we were talking about before, and we, as warm-blooded creatures, naturally and normally fear the darkness and don't like the darkness. And so we do something, we've always done something to entreat the return of the light, okay? What I wanted to discuss today, though, and make sure that everybody had a grasp on this, was the original story of a Messiah being born at this time. Okay? I want to discuss that because I think that it is essential, as I have told my children for their entire lives, is that you have to be armed with information. Okay? When you're out in the world and you're doing things differently from people around you, then you want to have information about why you do what you do. And you don't want to just be there and people telling you you're doing it wrong, and you don't have any way of saying, well, this is why I do this. Okay? So I want everybody to always have information that you can give to other people if you feel so inclined, and say, this is why I do this. So the original messianic individual born at this time was born from the great mother, Auset. Auset comes from the original empire, the first empire, what we would consider an empire here on earth, which was Kemet. Everybody say Kemet.
Kemet.
Kemet is, of course, the name for Egypt. This is what our ancestors called Egypt. It means black land, black people, place of blackness. It specifically refers to the fertility of the soil, because every time the Nile flooded, it made the soil very fertile. This is why an empire was able to be built there, right? Because an empire is centered on one thing, and that is wealth. Who created wealth? Black women in particular. So it was in this land of Kemet that the black woman created wealth. How did we create wealth? Because we were the original farmers. And when you farm, you have a surplus. You have more than what you need. Before we came along and said, I think I can take this pit from this peach and put it back in the ground and grow a whole peach tree and grow a whole grove of peach trees, right? Before black women who had been gathering fruit decided to do that, then people didn't have surpluses, right? You ate what was there. And then after that was gone, obviously there wasn't nothing else to eat. Which is why we have a propensity to overeat. Because our minds are still set to believe, once we have shared, when we lived in Barbados, what? We had a mango tree, an avocado tree in our backyard. Who all did we have to share mangoes with? We had to share mangoes with the monkeys, right? We had to share mangoes with the birds, right? And we had to share mangoes with our neighbors, right? So once those mangoes were gone, there are no more mangoes. So as human beings, our mind is still set to say, oh my God, when these mangoes gone, there ain't gonna be no more. So that's why we overeat, right? It's normal and natural. So what we did as black women in Kemet was we paid attention to the fact that when that seed dropped, another tree would grow. And we said, let's try to do this ourselves. So we created agriculture, right? And with agriculture, we had a surplus. So even once that particular tree, all the mangoes had been eaten, it was thousands of more trees. We could eat mangoes for days and days. We could go to the market and say, would you like some mangoes? Because I sure do want a piece of that cloth you wearing.
Right.
And we traded. That was where wealth started. And it started in that particular fertile area of Kemet. Okay? Because of that, an empire grew up. This is a whole bunch of surplus that we could deal with other black people and other brown people with. In that particular empire, the being that was worshipped was Auset. Auset was worshipped because she is the mothering principle. She is the principle that everything else springs forth from. Okay? This is why we wear blue for the winter solstice, because this was one of her colors. So when you see these deities depicted from Kemet, and you see the one with this stair step on their head, that's Auset. The Greeks, because they could not speak our language, called her Isis, but we call her Auset. All right? So this is Auset. Auset was the leading guiding principle of the time. There was a brother who decided that he was going to take our way of life in Kemet and go and teach it to the surrounding areas. And he began to walk around. Wherever he could walk, he would teach our way of life. And our way of life was balance, and we call it the science of nature and the art of proper living. So it's connection with nature and living in balance, right? And so this brother was Asar. In Kemet, everything happens in pairs. All the deities come in pairs, right? So you have Mu and Mut, you have Asar and Aset. There's always a masculine part and a feminine part. So Asar began to walk around and teach. He and Aset were married. And he began to walk around and teach. He would travel and teach. She would stay there with the farm and everything that was being created there in Kemet. Asar came up on his brother, who was his adversary, Set. And Set felt that he should have the position that Asar had. He saw what the brother was doing. He saw the brother fulfilling his destiny. And he said, that's my destiny that you over there fulfilling. And he became angry. And so what he did was he killed his brother Asar. Some of this should sound very familiar to you. And I'm going to tell you why in a little while. So he killed his brother Asar. He cut him up into 7 pieces and threw him into the river. And Auset began to mourn because this was her husband. This was the love of her life. And as she meditated on it, she realized that his body had been cut up into 7 pieces like this. And she walked all around that area, Kemet and all the areas surrounding it, which is, of course, now known as the Middle East. It's actually connected to Africa. It's actually another part of Africa. So she began to walk all around that area. She gathered all of the pieces of Asar. And once she gathered all of the pieces of Asar, she embraced him. And she was impregnated. She became pregnant. And the child that she was pregnant with was Heru. So Heru is the original Messiah that was created by his mother in this way that we're so used to hearing about around this time of year. This is the original story. This is the original Trinity. Now, I'm not saying any of this to say that we have to be focused on that, but I'm saying we should know where it comes from. And the reason that we should know where it comes from is because it belongs to us. It is our story. It is the story about us. It is the story about our ancestors. You will not find, there are no deities from an African perspective that were not first human, that did not walk the earth. What can we learn from a being that's never been on the earth when this is where we are? So every deity from an African perspective is an ancestor. And they were an ancestor before they became a deity. Okay? So that is these particular deities. So when you see depictions of Auset in general, you're going to see her nursing Heru. Okay? When you see pictures of Asar, he is going to be wearing one of those crowns of Kemet, usually this white crown. I think this is lower Kemet. And Asar did not come back to life. He became the ruler of the afterlife. So he stayed in the ancestral realm and he continued to rule that realm. Auset stayed here and she continued to bring abundance, as she still does, to Earth Mother Onile. And Heru then grew up to become the ruler of Kemet, right? When Auset found out, after she had embraced Asar, she fell asleep. Tahuti, who is the principle of wisdom, came and whispered to her that she would have a child, that she would have a baby. This is the principle of Tahuti. He has a ibis bird on his head because this is a bird that's very wise. So if you live in the tropics, you always see these birds walking around by marshy areas. He came and whispered in her ear that she would give birth to a son and that particular son would resurrect the land of Kemet, would be the savior for the people of Kemet. Because, of course, once Asar was gone, there was nobody there to protect it. And Set was running rampant throughout the land, doing devilment, right? If you think about the word Set, the Kemetic term that means something keeps going is An. So Set An became, once our philosophy was stolen, became Satan. That's where that particular term comes from. So Tahuti whispered within the ear of Auset, told her that she would become pregnant. Once she realized that she was pregnant, and once she gave birth to Heru, all of the deities came and praised him. And they said, this is the sun. This is the actual sun in the sky. This is the light bringer. And literally said, it is literally carved on the temple walls in Kemet, Oh, come let us adore him. This too should sound very familiar. And so they rejoiced, and once Heru was born, he reunited the land of Kemet that had been torn apart when his uncle came and was living out of balance. And so that's why when we see Heru, he has on the 2 crowns of Kemet. So there is a red crown for Upper Kemet, that white crown for Lower Kemet, right? There's 2 parts. So there's all of this part down here, there's Nubia and all of those areas, all of this part up here, there's Egypt, Ethiopia, and all of that. So he came and united all of those, okay? So that was what he came and did. So when we celebrate at this time, whether or not you choose to celebrate for many years, my children will tell you, and they can probably remember the year when we stopped. But for many years, we didn't have a Christmas tree. We didn't have no kind of decorations like that. We would have our Kanara set up. Everything would be red, black, and green. That's what we did. And we gave our presents on January 1st, because that's the day that you give presents on Kwanzaa. And they would get a present for every day of Kwanzaa. So each day they would get some kind of small present. And then all the big presents they would get on the gift giving day, which is the last day of Kwanzaa. And one year, well, I stopped. Once I was divorced, I stopped celebrating Kwanzaa because I'm an intellectual, and Kwanzaa always seemed made up to me, and it wasn't connected to anything that was happening in the cosmos. And I told them that I only want to celebrate things that I can actually see and feel. You know, if God, if the Most High, if the deities are actually doing something, then I can see that, right? I can see that the nights are longer. So that's something I can celebrate. But I'm not going to just celebrate some made up something, right? And so I stopped. And so I told them, and they said, well, what are we going to do? And I said, well, I'm going to let y'all decide. And I said, y'all do research. And y'all convince me as to why we should do specific things. And I think it was your paper that said we should have a Christmas tree, right? Camila's paper said these are the reasons all the way back to Africa that we should have a Christmas tree. This is a celebration that comes from us. And so the Christmas tree, if I remember correct me if I'm wrong. You don't remember? You put it up because it is a tree that is always green. So it remains green during this time. And so it reminds us, just like Asar said in Heru, that what? Everything is not dead. Things are resting. Things are hibernating, right? They still have that regenerative power. Just like Asar had been cut up into all those pieces, but he still had that regenerative power. So those trees that remain green remind us greenness is still here. It may look like everything is barren and gone, but it's not. Everything is still green. So Camila was like, that's where the Christmas tree comes from. So we should have a Christmas tree. And that first Christmas tree we had, it was what, about this big, wasn't it? Was it silver? It was silver. I didn't pick it up. And I don't remember. Do you remember what yours was?
Mine was about the lights, why we should have the lights, because I was talking about the Yule log and the different deities that come to eat the fruits off the tree and come because of the lights.
Okay, so they were why, and this is why you put ornaments on the tree, because the ornaments represent the different fruits and the different deities come and eat the fruit, right? And remind us again that everything is not dead, everything is going to be reborn, everything is coming forth again. I know Ashabi is going to say she doesn't remember hers, whether she actually does or not. Do you remember yours?
I remember I was writing about the Holly King and the Oak Tree, but I don't remember what I was trying to convince you of.
Okay. But those two are leaves that remain green, even when it's cold. And so if we think about how people lived in times before artificial light, right? And in times before there was a television, and certainly before there was an internet, or anything like that, refrigerator, all that stuff. So you're not looking at this kind of artificially created environment, right? So if we were to go outside and look right now, even though we've had a beautiful mild winter, still these kind of trees and those holly trees and those are the only trees that are still green, even here in Tennessee where it hasn't gotten that cold, right? So if you think about ancient people, when they looked at that, then they understand that means something. That's a spirit in that particular plant that is hardy enough to undergo the coldness of winter. And so think about an actual winter, right? Where other people live, it's already snowing stuff, right? But those trees are still green. Where other people live, it's too cold to get here and to get there. There's ice all over the roads, right? But those trees are still green. Those trees are still there. So from the perspective of ancient people, that spirit is something that you want in your home because it keeps you uplifted. It keeps you excited, okay? So that I wanted to make sure that we knew the story before we moved into the ritual. So what we're going to do as far as the ritual is concerned is we are going to, I'm going to pass these around just so everybody who hasn't seen the representations before gets to see what the deities look like. And that's just one representation of those. No, you can just pass it. That's just one representation. That's actually a drawing. And the brother that used to do the drawings for Asar said back in those times, his name was Brother Tahuti. And so he did those particular drawings of those deities. But if you look up Egypt, and if you look up Kemet, those are the same images that you're going to find anywhere. And that's part of what those particular images mean. It's making that noise. That means the point is get in our minds all of those things that we are letting go. Every year at this time, you, your spirit, your being, the essence of you is everything that's in here. The essence of you is everything that makes this body do what it has to do. That's your essence, is in here, right? The essence decided to grow this body, make it look like this, so that it could fulfill the destiny that you chose to fulfill in this lifetime. So every year, as a person of African descent, you, just like Asar, have been taken through it by Seth, right? We all got some stories from this year, right? Where Seth came and was doing devilment in our life, right? It was like, oh my God, how am I going to make it through this? And so you have felt yourself to be cut up into all of those pieces. That's something that has happened to you this year. Something that happened to you the year before that and the year before that. And it's going to happen again next year, right? The nature of life is obstacles. Life is not a place where no obstacles occur. Nobody's life is a place where no obstacles occur. We look at people, especially in this society, we're taught to look at people who have a lot of money. And we'll say, well, they ain't got no obstacles in their life. But once you meet them and talk to them, right? And you be like, well, they got more. How you got more obstacles than me? And you got all this money, you know. I thought that was the answer, you know, but obviously it isn't. So the nature of life is to make it through obstacles, is to be cut up into pieces like that. So we want to reflect, take a moment to reflect on those moments from this year. What were those moments that ripped us up like that? Then we want to reflect on what was the moment when we were gathered back together, right? Because you will always be gathered back together. It's easier for me to talk about it and to know that it's going to happen because I'm 49, right? When I was 22, I swore that I wasn't going to ever be gathered back together, right? It just wasn't going to happen, you know? When I was 25, I thought, well, perhaps I might be gathered back together. I still wasn't sure, though. And then made it to this good old ripe old 49. I'm positive. But it's only because it's happened to me so many times. So I want you to reflect on the moments that you were torn up because I want you to go into your darkness. What the leaders did in every ancient society, they started yesterday, they would go into seclusion. And our king in Oyatunji goes into seclusion on the 21st. It's actually his birthday as well. But he goes into seclusion. You do not see him until this particular time period is over. Because as a leader, you have to go within We're all leaders and guides in our own life. So you got to go within. You have to deal with whatever demons, quote unquote, that you had to face this year. You have to deal with them. Any kind of obstacle or blockage that you have, even if it's a way that you feel about yourself. What I promise you and what I can guarantee you is whenever you bring it out to the light and give it some attention, then you can deal with it. As long as you keep pushing it to the back of your mind, you ain't gonna never deal with it. You ain't gonna never figure it out. Once you bring it out to the light, sometimes that means talking about it. Sometimes that means writing it down in your journal. Of course, y'all know I'm gonna go make a YouTube video about it. I was just thinking about this, you know. So however you get it out, you have to bring it out. You have to sit it here and look at it and say, wow, that was terrible. Because that's the only way you're gonna figure out the origin of it. You're never going to know where it comes from if you refuse to look at it. Or if you continue to pretend that it didn't happen, that it didn't exist. So we're going to take some time. And we're going to reflect on what our darkness looked like this year. Right? So this is a safe place. If you got to cry, if you got to holler out, whatever, that's all good. That's all fine. Ain't nobody scared of that here. Turn that light off for me, baby. So we're going to spend some time in our darkness. And then once the mothers say, okay, that's good, they done had enough time in darkness, we are all collectively as a family going to light our candles and come forth into our light. Right? This is our time to do that. We get to do that. So that's mine, so that one has to be lit first. So we get to do that. We get to come forward into our light. And from an African perspective, you always, every pivotal moment of your life, you are starting all over again. That's why for every pivotal moment, you get a new name. So you get a name when you get initiated. If you initiate into a different issue, you get a whole different name. If you take some other kind of title, you get a whole different name. Because you have the opportunity to begin again. You always have that. Nothing that you have done is hanging on you and is so horrible that the universe has rejected you. Because you're here. So whatever you think you have done or whatever has happened to you, it hasn't been so horrible that you've been rejected by the universe and that you now don't deserve the favor of the universe. That's not how life works. Right? We're here. So let's go into that darkness. Let's have some meditative time in that darkness. Let's get all of that out. Go down off in there and think about that. And then after that, we'll come back into our light. So little people, I need y'all to be quiet and still so that grown folks can think about what they need to think about right now. what some of the obstacles were that they overcame this year?
Okay. Mine was self-love. First thing I thought about was I was in 3 relationships. And so I was like, whoa, 3 relationships. And all of that was because I didn't know how to love myself. And so shedding that, learning how to self-love, practice that every day. Something we're still working on, but that was definitely like one of the number ones, was not loving yourself enough.
I feel you. I think that's one of mine every year. Yes, ma'am.
I am letting go of, like, y'all know I'm scary, so I just be scared of everything. So I'm really working on letting go of fear and stuff that I don't know, cause like myself, like I know I like to know, like I like to know before, like I don't know where I'm going, I don't know what's going on, I don't know I like, I just have to let stuff just kind of go sometimes and just let it be whatever it's gonna be. And then I be scared because I don't know. Like I don't want to go through this door because I don't know, but I have to be okay with not knowing. And then I love myself, and and all my silliness and my flaws, but it's like, I go through stuff that I don't have to go through, and I think I be lonely. Like I secretly be lonely a little bit, and then I be dealing with stuff that I don't have to deal with because I be a little lonely. And then I'm like, ooh, okay, never mind. I like my space. Let me go. So it's one of those things that being 28, and having my family, it's one of those things that I just kind of have to learn and go through. So I'm gonna be like my other 28-year-old triplets over here, and be grown one of these days and be like them, but not yet. I ain't ready for what they got going on in their lap.
There is plenty of time for that, but yes, I feel you on that.
From an older woman's point of view, that same perspective, I hear listening and honoring my own voice. So you hear, you see it, yourself is telling you what it is, but you do something else. You do something else because for whatever reason, you decided you're going to do this something else. And then it always ends up back around where you first told yourself.
Exactly.
But you didn't honor your own voice. So still, at this age, recognizing that my first mind was the right mind.
Every time.
Every time. And now, Jackie made the comment how happy I am, but it's just to be back in my own skin, with my own voice, do what?
Yes.
All of this want to do.
Yes.
So that feels good. It feels good.
Yeah.
And even though the fears are there, you can do the research, you can answer the questions, but it feels good in your own skin.
Yes.
Doing your own thing.
Yes, it does. Old folks used to always say, follow your first mind. My ancestors called it your ovaries. Your head. You always got to follow that head, right? Anybody else?
This year, like when I look back on it, I'm like, wow. It felt like there wasn't nothing happening, nothing moving, it's like stuff. And then when I look back like month by month, I was like, girl, you're doing some things. Some stuff came to completion. Some things, like really happened that was, I'm talking about unpredictable, unexpected, never thought, had given up on, like, I was married in 2010. In 2012, I got in a disagreement. My first, heated disagreement. And he disappeared. Like, never said, I'm done. This is why. I can't. I made a mistake. Nothing. No words. And I think for a long time I was like caught in a trauma behind that. Like, what the fuck just happened? In October, I went to a photography exhibit of a friend that I had forgotten was a mutual friend. And there he is. And I'm talking about has lived in the city. We've had mutual friends in common. You know, the ancestors just saw fit to be like, you don't need to know more parts of that. Just presented himself and said things that I, you know, always thought like he should really, he should really apologize or whatever. And the things were said, and it was just like, thank you for sharing. All right. That's it. Like, I don't even need to engage and interact with it like that. Like, so that was like, would never, like I had so long ago given up the possibility that there would ever be any form of civil communication, discourse, anything. And just, it's like when you're ready and it'll just pop up. You know, I started really moving in what is for me.
Yes.
And not really, you know, kind of exercising my not give a fuckingness. You know what I mean? Like, you know, people gonna say what they're gonna say, they're gonna think what they're gonna think, they're gonna have their opinions, and excuse me, little people, I'm sorry.
Yes.
I apologize. But I'm sure at some point you may have heard it somewhere before.
Or said it.
And what I'll say about that is choose wisely.
Right.
When, you know, like sprinkles, don't add too much. But I feel like it really, like I feel the gathering up of the pieces and the regeneration and the, you know, like I look back, there's some people I never thought I would not be in communication with, haven't heard from them in months. Some people I never, like I knew of, but I never had really interacted with. That's like my partners. Like,
True.
so that was a very odd year. Like, I don't know if I would go back again, but I'm glad that it you know, it all fell out the way that it did. Yeah. I feel like I was just, like, as we were sitting there, I was like giving, like, it was like almost like I was my own supervisor on my job, giving me my year-end review. Like,
Exactly.
What do you think were your strengths and weaknesses?
That's how I was doing it too.
How could you have improved? Back in April, you were late.
Exactly what's happening there. Yes. Yes.
But overall, I think I might still get that raise.
Exactly. So go on and bring it to yourself.
Keep it to
yourself.
yourself.
I think December is always, since I've been paying attention and since I've been intentional about my life.
Right.
December is always the month that's like, hey girl, you know, let's reset, you know, type of thing. But in this year it was a form of something different. But I can say that the things that tried me this year are, I'm a mild-tempered person. I'm usually I'm happy. I have a lot of energy. I'm usually the bubbly person. And when conflict comes though, I know how to deal with conflict. I'm trained to deal with conflict, but that doesn't mean I like to feel it. When it rises, it's like I know my physiological triggers, and I start feeling them. And I'm like, you know, I start to push them down or stuff like that. And being a businesswoman, when you're dealing with other people, you're dealing with parents, you're dealing with other businesses, and you know, it's like, I know why I'm about to lose my head, because there are some things that I just hadn't been tried at, and that it raises so quick in me, and I want to go there with people. I have to remember to keep a cool head. Yes. And 2018 has reminded me of how I need to maintain not just my, you know, womanly etiquette, not just that, but being wise. Even though I'm hot, you know, on the inside, I need to be mindful about my words, because the work that I do words are power with everybody, but the work that I do, you never know who hears you, who says something, some parent, some mother, some child, somebody, someone. If I lose my cool or lose it, you never know how it's going to affect somebody that heard it, or somebody, and I run into them one day and I'm trying to lend help and they're like, but you were the one that such and such and such. So, right, but it's in me, that darker side of me, it's here. I'm a Scorpio. That energy fuels, a part of who I am, but it tempering that with the sweetness that I have both. That's why I live in. But I don't know, just the balance between, especially with my intimate relationships with my family members and my loved ones, that fine line between, should I say this right now or not ever, or if I say it, what is it gonna look like?
Exactly.
But if I don't, how am I gonna feel? That whole thing. So just remembering what tried me with my emotions, a lot, because this is a nodal. I had a nodal return this year, and in my one of my south nodes in Cancer. So I was like, all up in the fields. I was just so emotional about so much. And I was like, Mom, why am I crying all the time? But I just, the emotional management, piece of it was big for me. But knowing that one thing that I want to let go of, just being mindful of my emotions, is that however I feel is okay for my evolution and my development.
Yes.
Like, if you might not like what I say.
That's true.
Even if it's nice, you still might not like it. But it's not my responsibility to make you feel good. It's my responsibility to make me feel good.
Exactly.
So if I have to say this and be this and do this to maintain me and what happens over here, then I have to be okay with that. Because sometimes I wasn't okay. And I'd be like, well, okay, well, we'll talk later, or we'll talk next week, or come off as next, just the putting off, because it's just the feeling, the way the energy made me feel, being okay with being uncomfortable at the moment, because it's what's best for me, probably what's best for you too, but just being okay, being uncomfortable. Is that, that's what I'm, going to continue to work on. But that darker side of me, it didn't really get a whole lot of attention for a while, and she's like, "Hey, girl," So I'm working with that energy, embracing that energy, and so that's my.
Get her sorted out.
Yeah,
She gonna jump out when you least expect it.
She jumped out a couple of times. I was like,
Get her sorted out.
Hold on.
Get her sorted out. Yeah, get her figured out.
She's wonderful. She's great. She's open wonderful doors.
Yeah.
I'm gonna let her shine.
She's gonna get it done when nobody else can.
Right.
And make sure that when you feel those emotions, that you feel them. So that was not this year, but probably when I was close to your age, that was very difficult for me, because I didn't come from a family that showed a lot of emotions. And so I was very good at just not having any. And once I began to eat properly and meditate and do yoga and pay more attention to myself, then I found myself crying about everything. I had never cried about nothing. So not only did my family not show a lot of emotions, my two siblings that were older than me that I hung around the most were my brothers. And so, because they had been socialized not to cry, then they certainly weren't going to ever let me cry about anything. And I may get hit if I was like, "You crying? Sitting there crying like a little girl?" Because, I wasn't supposed to be a little girl when I was playing with them. Crying like an old girl, so I never cried about anything. I could get divorced, this could happen, stuff could fall apart. I'm not getting ready to cry about it. So around that time, I started crying about everything, and I was so mad at myself. You're just an old punk. Woman up. Are you out here crying? Yeah. And so I had to make peace with all of those emotions coming up. So make peace with that. It's very powerful, and it's very useful. And you get to do it. You get to cry, you get to be mad, you get to do all that stuff. Anybody else?
You know, for me this year, a lot of things kind of came up that really highlighted things that I do not have in order. You know, and then too, you know, just try not to focus on those things so much. But you know, at a certain point, you know, things kind of came, you know, to a collective head, you know, and all those things that I did not have in order wanted to gather up in the same place at the same time on the same month, on the same building.
Speak on it. Yes, ma'am.
I don't like confrontation either. And I'm really good at, you know, painting very beautiful pictures in my mind of what's really going on. Sitting out, you know what I'm saying, in the raggedy position that I'm in, because, you know, I don't like this. I have this beautiful picture of where I am in my life. Just falling apart everywhere. Swipe the cards. The universe will provide. I done got to the end of the universal pot. So I have to start, you know, looking at, you know, honestly, you know, how I'm moving and how I have my things in order. And yes, knowing that, you know, the universe will provide and that, you know, there's certain, you know, energies that just always, you know, work on my side for whatever reason. Thank you, because Lord, I can't get under the bridge. That's not, you know, the picture that I have in my mind.
Although we would hang up sorry, you still make it real cute.
I still got my furniture. We gonna keep that. I like the whole house.
No,
at least for one night.
don't go around the cane. Just come over here.
Right, but,
here.
But I do think that, you know, that's been, you know, a consistent, you know, thing that I've been dealing with, you know, throughout the year. It was a rough year, but I am grateful for those things kind of coming to light so that I can make sure that next time I have those things in order, because I don't think there's nothing else in the pot. But yeah.
So this year, I've always been consistent with my 4-day warrior ritual. This year, I realized in doing that, because as you know, we started off the year with community oversight, thought it was dead in council. They thought they had killed it. And here we are at the end of the year. Y'all know how all that turned out. And I'm sorry, y'all. My warriors did that. My warriors did that. I got to give my issue, Eshu Alona, and Eshu Odara, and Ogun, and Osho, and Orumala. I have to give them credit. They did that. And Oya. Oya last year. I got to give them credit. Because I would do that ritual, and they would need to be fed a specific way. And there have been several times this year where where the altar has been open all day. I started in the morning, and I said, "Okay, y'all not gonna let me close before I go to work?" Nope. So good thing I work at home, because that means I go back and forth between them. It was open all day, and everybody wanted something. And very specific things. And after that would happen, then something would shift. And, you know, folks been flirting with Jesus for a long time. But it's not until we go back to who we are that stuff changes. So I realized in doing all that there was a time when Ogun, you know, as wonderful as it is, Ogun opens our personal ways. But Ogun used to lead armies. Eshu used to come and be the advisor for leaders and kings and queens. And settle disputes. And negotiate treaties. And I feel like I felt that energy all through this year. No, we love you, we work with you personally, but we're bigger than just you personally. We are meant to rule. We are meant to run everything.
Yes.
And we need to let them do that. That's how the Haitian Revolution happened.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
If we continue to do that, Haiti would probably be where America is now.
Speak on it.
And so I'm hoping to carry that into 2019.
Yes, I shall. I shall. Yes. No thinking small, no being small. Be as gigantic as you are. And you certainly faced an army this year. And faced them right on down. Yes.
For me this year, speaking about not being small, that is something that I've always struggled with. Always trying to be invisible, trying to disappear, trying to be enough of this so I'm not too this. Try not to make other people uncomfortable. And this year, I allowed myself to listen and think about all of the things and places and groups and things in my life that were draining me, making me feel uncomfortable, and that I was putting onto myself as some sort of clothing of this person that I thought that everybody wanted me to be, not who I was. And so I allowed myself to remove those things. It was hard because I would go back and forth with myself, and I would partially remove myself from things and then not really. And then I finally allowed myself to just take steps and step out of situations and places that were doing that to me, so that there would be no place and nothing in my mind or no place in my life where I was using and harnessing the energy of being small that I could always go back to whenever I started to get afraid of being too much. What that looked like for me is that it made my daily schedule and my life a lot simpler than what it would normally be, because I'm the kind of person who has a hard time saying no, and so I always have too many things on my plate, and I'm always the last person that I take care of. And so I felt really guilty at the beginning for it being that simple, until I decided that I was going to be the main thing and the most important thing that was on that. And so I kind of one of the things that I started doing as well was that toward the end of the year started doing a detox and exercising and whatnot, something that I had stopped doing because whenever my schedule would be too full, then I would make sure that everything else got done except that. And so I decided that health and self-preservation would be the first thing on the list. And so then instead of me staying up extra or using the extra little bit of time that I had left to do homework or to do housework or to do this or that, it would be the other way around. Me using that time to do something for myself. And it ended up flopping toward the end of the year because I did have finals since I am in grad school. But I picked it right back up because it gave me such a sense of empowerment and of power. It gave me a sense of control over my life. And I'm just hoping that moving forward, I can continue to take away the control that anybody else or any other thing thinks that they have in my life. And I hope that I can continue to remove myself from any position where people are benefiting from my smallness. And I want to be like, no more, and fuck it, I'm a grown woman now and I want to do that. And so that's, in my opinion, that's the way that I see, that you do that. And so that's pretty much, something that I've been dealing with, and something that I hope I can continue to get better and better with as time progresses.
For me, and the word that I was seeking just came to me like a few minutes ago. I was like, I'm just gonna lay here and just stay still until it comes to me. And that word is acceptance. On several different levels. I'm one that has always felt like I needed to kind of chisel my own path. Like things were never just easy for me. I always had to work really hard for them. And this year something radical has happened that hasn't happened for me, it seems like, in years. And when I say like chiseling a path, but this year it's like dynamite has been laid for me, and like the way has been blown completely open for me to walk through. And I don't need my little chisel and my little hammer. And I'm sitting there looking stupid like, what? It's open? It's just, maybe just it, you know, and like kind of going through it really slowly, making sure that there's like I can just take it, I can just have it, like just like this. Like, things haven't been that easy for me in so long that I had to like go in really deep to accept it. Like I hadn't been doing my spiritual work all these years. Like I hadn't been praying all of these prayers and crying all of these tears and sweating all of this sweat. Like, why not? Why wouldn't this be handed to you? Why wouldn't this be? It really ain't easy because you've been doing the work all these years. This is the culmination of all of that. Like, so yes, this is for you. This is for you to have and to hold and to rejoice in and to dance on it. You know, like, so acceptance of that, also acceptance of, you know, of who people are. And my actual relationship with them versus the one that I made up in my mind. And you know, that helps me to conserve a lot of extra energy. Because what I was able to start doing when I accepted was to stop watering dead plants. And I could keep that water in my reservoir, and I could only water those things that are showing signs of life and showing growth. And you know, you keep watering something that's already dead, you just water. Yeah. You ain't got nothing but mud, wet dirt. It ain't getting soaked up and I know, right? You know, and so, you know, acceptance of that. Acceptance more of who I really am and what I really like and enjoy, like being in this darkness, that dark stuff. Like it's really good in there and warm, and beautiful things incubate there. It's not all bad. And it took me a minute. I was scared to go to those dark places, but you know, and one thing that I've done that I hadn't done in a long time was defend myself more, and that was part of that acceptance. Like I don't have to be quiet and just let it. You know, I'm one that I try not to be confrontational, but you know, I've had some pivotal moments where I had to give them that fire. And like that's right. I have that too. Like my mama gave me that. My grandmama gave me that. I'm allowed to use that. I accept my right to use that. Y'all's asses, and I did it. It was great. And it was great. And so, you know, this year has been a year of acceptance, and I'm grateful for it. So yeah, that's my word.
This year I was pregnant, but I feel like even besides the physical sense, I feel like I was also pregnant in the spiritual sense, because I felt like this whole year was just me like in the labor pains of like birthing myself and, you know, who I'm going to be, who I am, who I was about to be, and letting go of the things that, you know, that were holding me back from that. And one of the words that kept coming up in my mind was self-doubt, because I feel like I doubt myself a lot. All of the stuff that I want to do, all the things, you know, that I know I can do. I'm like, well, what if this happens, and what if that happens? You know, I can't do it because of this, or, you know, whatever. So I feel like that's one thing that I know I need to let go of. And I need to step more into self-care. I think somebody else was talking about self-love, because that's
you know, I need to step into the same thing, self-love, self-care, you know.
And ask for help. Ask for help,
Yeah.
especially when you have a little bitty person. And your self-care is so important, but it's so much more difficult to get to. So make sure that you're asking for help. But we are all here. We've all been there.
I think asking for help was my main challenge this year. Like I absolutely hate having to ask for money, having to ask for any kind of assistance because most of the time I have it figured out. So then when I don't, then I feel like, you know, I must have failed in some way or something like that. But I know Mommy was saying that, you know, when you don't ask for help, then like the universe will kind of make a situation where you have to, just to remind you that like you're not able to do it all by yourself. You know, like you can try to, but that's absolutely insane. Like there's got to be other people that are playing some part, even if you feel like you're doing it by yourself. Like there's all these other factors that maybe you don't see. So everything, like I don't know, I just feel like every month there was something else I had to ask for help about or for or whatever, and so I just feel like it makes me physically ill. Like ask for, I don't know, like it's not like I'm not a whole person or whatever, but it's just I just hate it, and so I think that my challenge is to not see that as a sign of weakness.
Tell me you want to turn it off since they can't see me.
Press the X.
But announce it before you do it.
Me?
Didn't you type something on there?
Nope.
Type that in.
I can't type anything.
Where's the chat thing?
You can just look at comments. You can't reply to them.
Tammy sent a lot of messages.
Well, that's fine. Sit up. Anybody else? Or is that everybody?
Did I just press X?
This year has been